much. Good morning. Um, First off, I want to thank John Lopez for doing the service last week while we were gone. Yeah. Do you know that we've got video of our talks on the website now? So if you would like, I got to see John. I watched his whole talk, and that was great because it reminds me that I can go away and leave you in very good hands. We have a magnificent practitioner team, and there's not every minister out there that can say that. So check us out. We're going to have more of the talks on, and this is something new for us, and it's very exciting, I think. Well, this week does begin a new month, as Heather said, and our theme for July is living a life that matters. You know, for a long time, I've been drawn to the works of people like Joseph Campbell, Angeles Arian, John O'Donohue, Marianne Williamson, Carl Jung, all the people who place emphasis on that inner journey that we take. And in fact, that's really what drew me to the science of mind philosophy, because it is a study of life from the inside out. Because if we don't change what's inside, the outside isn't going to follow. So I truly believe that what we are missing in the world today is that balance of the inner work with the outer achievements. In her book, Belonging, Remembering Ourselves Home, author and dream worker Tokopah Turner writes, "There is a world behind this world. The old cultures used to be in constant conversation with it through the sacred practices of storytelling, dreaming, ceremony, and song. They invited the other world to visit them, to transmit its wisdom to them so that they might be guided by that ancient momentum. But as we succumb to the spell of rationalism, the living bridge between the worlds fell into disrepair. As fewer made the journey back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds touch, we forgot how to find the other world. Let's consider the word matter, which comes from the Latin root mater, which means origin, source, mother. So in pre-Socratic times, mater was used to describe the underlying nature of the visible world. And we still use it in that sense when we say this is what matters most. Though we may not be able to articulate why, we use it in this way when we're near the essence of a thing. But in the modern usage of the word, matter is the concrete stuff of objects composed of atoms, mass, and molecules. So in the evolution of our relationship to matter, we have gone from considering our fundamental nature to be limitless and unknowable to nothing more than corporeal elements. So for me, this means that matter, the world of the material and our quest for it, has supplanted what matters, the world of the heart, the essence behind the things. And where there is matter without what matters, the doorsill disappears and the inner world is lost. And I truly believe that our survival, look at what we're talking about as far as climate changes. I truly believe that our survival as a species is dependent on a retrieval and renewal of the sacredness that is the heart of all life. So to live a life that matters, then, we must form a harmonious combination of matters of the heart with matters of our material world. And I believe that you and I are the ones who are able still to go back and forth across that door sill where the two worlds touch. Because this is what we teach, this is what we learn about, this is what we read about, this is what our Science and Mind magazine talks about. We are the ones who can walk between those two worlds. And we can share that and inspire others to do so too. Again, Tokapa Turner says, there is a world behind the visible surface of things which is pulsing vitality into our lives. It is the birthplace of dreams, the workshop of imagination, the source from which all creation arises, and unto which the ancestors have returned. At any given moment, we are either turning away from or coming into congruence with our kinship with mystery. Only when we wrestle to keep the endangered language of beauty and sensitivity alive do we have a chance at becoming necessary to the urgency of our times. So all this month we're going to be speaking, we're going to have topics that speak to this crossing this door sill, this threshold between the two worlds, how we access it, how we incorporate it into our lives, how we live in community from it. And by the way, Tokapa was quoting this door sill. Tokapa was quoting Rumi. And the quote from Rumi is, "The breezes at dawn have secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep." People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Isn't that sweet? So I think our topic for today, letting go of the life we planned, is a perfect starting point for our journey. And Joseph Campbell said, we must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And all we have to do is look back, on our own lives, the twists and the turns that have brought us here, to know that this is played out. I had planned a life in Kansas City as a happily married wife and mother. Well, that didn't work. And then I planned on working behind the scenes at Founder Center in Los Angeles because I found and loved the teaching, and I had no intention of becoming a pulpit minister. This was my calling. This was my plan. Well, then I found my voice, and I moved to Florida, and I planned on growing a church in Vero Beach. 2 hurricanes later, I am here, and I plan on living the rest of my life right here. But none of us know for sure. Plans can change in an instant. And John's fall, most of you know that he took a spill this week when we were up at Pine Top. That fall brought all that home to me, because in the hospital in Show Low, I was worried about whether John had a broken rib or a broken collarbone. And then the doctor came in and said, John has a small brain bleed that seems to have stabilized. We want to transport him to Banner Hospital because we don't have the facilities to do brain surgery if it gets worse. My heart fell into my right foot. It just looked. And then I remembered when John began taking blood thinners that the doctor said, whatever you do, don't bump your head. A brain bleed could be fatal. The life we planned is always changing. And some of the changes we make willingly and knowingly. I chose to let go of my life in Florida. That was a willing change of plans. But some of those plans are foisted upon us. I think most of us here, with the with the obvious exceptions of Desi and Paloma, are the elders of the community, And certainly the aging process brings changes to our plans. It brings changes to our body and the abilities of our body. It brings changes to those we love. as they age, we may need to care for them, or we may lose them. So our question becomes, whether by choice or by circumstance, how do we let go of the life we planned so that we can embrace the life that is waiting for us? Author, speaker, and shame researcher Brené Brown has spent years studying the people that she calls the wholehearted, those who have found the courage to live with their whole hearts. And these people seem to be more resilient to and tolerable of change, and they're able to bounce back more quickly after their plans have been altered. And to me, these are the people who have learned to incorporate those spiritual qualities, the ones on the other side of the door sill, with their daily lives. And in fact, I believe that spirituality is essential to wholeheartedness, because spirituality is what gives us the resiliency to let go of what we had planned. You know, as a researcher obsessed with facts and measurability, Brené Brown reluctantly came to that same conclusion. You know, at first she had trouble identifying spirituality as a component to her work with shame. It didn't fit into the fact-filled measuring work the world that she lived in. But she finally determined that spirituality wasn't about a particular religion or set of beliefs, but rather a sense that something deeper is also a part of who and what we are. And she finally defined spirituality in her book as recognizing and celebrating that we are all inextricably connected to each other by a power greater than all of us, and that our connection to that power and to one another is grounded in love and compassion. Practicing spirituality brings a sense of perspective, meaning, and purpose to our lives. And she goes on, she says, without exception, spirituality, the belief and connection of power greater than self and interconnections grounded in love and compassion, emerged as an essential component of resilience. But she also found that there were three other significant patterns that were also related to becoming resilient or being resilient. And she defined those as cultivating hope, practicing critical awareness, letting go of numbing and taking the edge off vulnerability, discomfort, and pain. And so I want to touch on those three for a moment, because I think if we incorporate those ideas, those ways of thinking, into our spirituality, then we'll have the resiliency to accept and embrace the life that is waiting for us. So cultivating hope. The dictionary definition of hope is a feeling of expectation and a desire for certain things to happen. It has also been described as a feeling of trust. So to me, the idea of hope as a feeling of expectation is not expecting a specific outcome. Rather, it's the expectation that this power greater than myself knows what to do when I do not. And it guides me to the next step of my life if I believe that it does. Hope also tells me that I have the ability and the power to make decisions and to take action. I have a belief and confidence in myself because of my spiritual base. And I think that's true of each and every one of us here. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, says, developing confidence in ourselves, in our ability to meet and handle all undesirable situations, requires that we must have confidence in that something which is greater than we are. Then we will have spiritual self-reliance. When this is done, the lesser must always submit to the greater. Weakness will give way to strength. Despair will turn to hope. Hate will become love. Failure will become success. And sickness will dissolve into health. The action that takes place is not one of despotic or overruling harshness, but one that moves in harmony, love, beauty, warmth, and order, quietly transforming all that is unlike it. So hope is an antidote to our feelings of despair and desolation. So we're able then to hold on to our basic optimism, regardless of where we are or what our situation is. We won't always be happy. We're going to have feelings of hurt, sadness, anger, even despair. But hope sustains us during those hard times and makes the good times even more fulfilling. And according to Brené Brown, hope is not an emotion but a cognitive way of thinking. So hope is something that we can cultivate, to look beneath any situation and recognize that good is waiting for us even when we can't see it at the moment. And to hold on to that and still in the midst of everything be able to say, I am glad I'm alive. Practicing critical awareness. When we're in the process of letting go of the life we planned, especially if it's not our choice, we might be tempted toward victimhood. Why me? Why me? So when we have a strong sense that we are part of something larger, that we're guided by a greater good, then we won't stay in that place. We might be in it for a while, but we won't stay there because we're going to be like that clown balloon with the big feet. You remember him? Remember him? I think all of us had one. I remember my son had one. But you would hit him and you'd knock him to the floor and back he'd bounce, right? And that's who we are when we practice critical awareness. No matter what we're experiencing, to take a moment to ask ourselves, what's real? What's the truth in this situation? What's the truth about me? And, I often say, you've probably heard me say, when of something unpleasant, I generally say, it may be a lowercase f fact, but it is not a capital T truth. Where do I find that truth? What is that truth? And I have a quote by Dr. Holmes that's taped onto my printer. It says, and the first sentence is in all caps, to desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth. When things look the worst, that is the supreme moment to demonstrate to ourselves that there are no obstructions to the operation of truth. When things look the worst is the best time to work, the most satisfying time. The person who can throw himself with complete abandon into that limitless sea of receptivity, having cut loose from all apparent moorings, is the one who will always receive the greatest reward. I keep that quote close to me because in those moments of despair, heartache, sorrow, which may knock me down, I know that like that clown balloon, I'm able to bounce back up again. Numbing and taking the edge off. And Brené Brown says, I talked to many research participants who were struggling with worthiness. When we talked about how they dealt with difficult emotions, such as shame, grief, fear, despair, disappointment, sadness, I heard over and over about the need to numb and take the edge off of feelings that cause vulnerability, discomfort, and pain. When I interviewed the participants whom I describe as living a wholehearted life about the same topic, they consistently talked about trying to feel the feelings, staying mindful about numbing behaviors, and trying to lean into the discomfort of hard emotions. And she goes on to say that these wholehearted people were not immune to numbing, but the primary difference seemed to be that they were aware of the dangers of numbing and had developed the ability to feel their way through high vulnerability experiences. And they seemed to know intuitively that when painful emotions are numbed, so are the positive ones. And that they could not be numb and live an authentic, wholehearted life. And there's as many ways to numb ourselves as there are people, Even things that appear positive. I mean, we all know what leads to addictions. There's things like drinking, drug taking, gambling, shopping. But sometimes there's this idea to do, to be out, like volunteering for everything, working 3 jobs, whatever it is, so busy that we ignore the pain. And that's a form of numbing as well. So as we use our spiritual base to feel our way through our dark nights, our experience becomes a source for new hope and a new way of living. It's hard to let go of the life we planned. I remember Reverend Peggy Bailey saying more than once, "I went kicking and screaming to my good." You know, and how many of us can say that? In fact, she even gave me a coffee cup one Christmas that said everything I ever let go of had claw marks on it. You know, it is our nature to hang on to the familiar, the status quo. But when we allow change to be part of our natural inheritance, we find that often the life that is waiting for us is even better than the life we planned. When my friend's husband died, she said, "If making his transition was for Gary's highest and best good, then it must be for mine too." And as she moved through her grief and began to redefine herself, she ran for and won a seat on the County Board of Supervisors. She joined a local theater group and became involved in the production of several plays. And she continued her ministry through guest speaking and teaching classes. And today she's as happy as I've ever known her to be. We cannot allow ourselves to be fenced in by our need for status quo or our fear of the unknown. Our spiritual strength, the world behind the surface of matter, pulsates vitality into our lives when we are willing to let go of the life we planned and embrace the life that is waiting for us. And it's then that we live a life that matters. It is then we can say with all our heart, "I'm glad I'm alive." Thank you. Namaste. See, I got the fences in.
Yeah, really. How are you?